Runner 2049 is directed by Denis Villeneuve. He directed this movie. Also this movie. Also Sicario. Also Arrival. Movies that I really like. I think this guy is a really good director, and he's one of the most profound directors of our decade. Haven't really been excited for Blade Runner 2049 because when I heard that this movie was coming out, I didn't really see the first Blade Runner. I actually saw Blade Runner for the first time as a school assignment, so that's kind of what got me introduced to the franchise. So what really got me attached to this Blade Runner sequel was that he was directing it. And this wasn't just like a movie he was making on his own. This was like an established franchise from a long time ago. This is a Ridley Scott production, and he's doing something big now, so I'm really glad that he's branching out and doing stuff that's very well known, because a lot of the stuff that he does is somewhat indie and discreet. There's no problem with that whatsoever, but I'm just glad that he's getting more attention as his career goes on. And even though it's a movie that's centered around a very popular piece of sci-fi, he's still able to add his own substance to this film. And what did I think of Blade Runner 2049? I am actually in utter shock of what I just witnessed tonight. This was such a different film. It was very close to the original film that came out in 1982. I definitely recommend people go see this, especially if you're a film major. There's just a lot to appreciate in terms of narrative, story, cinematography, visuals, characters. There is a lot happening here. There's a lot to appreciate. Let's talk about Blade Runner 2049. So Blade Runner 2049 is centered around Ryan Gosling's character, who is a Blade Runner. And he comes across something that is really odd and very different that kind of highlights a certain portion about the replicants. And because of this different thing that he spots, he has to go find Rick Deckard and ask him, hey, what's going on here? And a majority of the movie is about him finding Rick Deckard. It is a detective film. He is trying to figure out where he's been. Rick Deckard has actually not been seen for 30 years. So a large majority of the movie is him trying to find Harrison Ford's character. So yeah, that is the main focus of what the movie is about. And I loved everything about it. I love the journey of this and all the different things that are going on here, the different themes that are introduced, the different characters that you see throughout this film. And I just loved really everything about it. I will say that the movie is really long. I'm just gonna like approach this negative. It's not really a negative, it's just kind of like what I think as a regular film goer as to what I feel about this film. I think this film is incredibly long. It's actually 2 hours and 44 minutes long. And I kind of understand why, because we haven't had a Blade Runner movie in what, like 30 years? So I guess they just wanted to take their time with everything, and they wanted the audience to be really invested in this film, because we just haven't seen a movie like this in a while. So I understand why they did that, but they could have made the scenes less longer. There's a little example that I'm going for here. There's a scene in the film where Ryan Gosling's character, like, you know what he's trying to do. He's going across this room to this furnace to grab a horse, like a toy horse, and you already know what he's doing, because if you're not an idiot, you know for a fact that he's trying to go across this room to grab this horse, and it's like 2 to 3 minutes long. And then when he reaches into the furnace and grabs this toy, it doesn't even show the toy yet. It's like wrapped in a cloth, and he slowly takes the cloth off, and it's like, okay, I already know it's the horse. Can you just show the horse? And it finally shows the horse. Like, the problem isn't the movie is just like long. It's just that the scenes are really long. The sequences are just long. I mean, that's okay to do. Quentin Tarantino does long sequences all the time. But for this film, it just kind of felt like it was dragging along and along. But fortunately, the ambience really held this film together. I feel like the sound design really helped you, like, being invested in this film. There's a lot of electronic ambience that really helps just the investment of this film. It brings that electronic dystopian future kind of feel to it that the first Blade Runner had. So I really like the music in this, like without a doubt. I think this should get like best score and best sound design. The director's film Arrival won best sound design in 2016, so I wouldn't be surprised if like this won best sound design, like his work yet again. So yeah, definitely love the sound design of this movie. And once again, Blade Runner has really good cinematography. This director works very well with Roger Deakins. He has worked with him on Prisoners and Sicario, and this cinematographer, Roger Deakins, is really good at capturing darkness in film, but you're still able to see what's going on. It's still visible, but it's still able to maintain that realistic darkness. The city is still going through a power outage after a blackout that happened a very long time ago, and you can see that throughout the film. You can see that only certain areas have light, but they were able to show off the areas that didn't have light, but you were still able to see that there was no light. So Roger Deakins is not only able to properly convey light, he's also conveying darkness in his films, and you can see that. And that's why Roger Deakins is probably one of the best cinematographers out there. Also, the themes that are present in the first Blade Runner film are present in this film, but 10 times better. This film actually suggests something that I didn't even bother to think of, and that's, what if the replicants could procreate, basically? And that's just something that I wasn't expecting whatsoever. And that is such a good thing to explore, because after the first Blade Runner, what can you exactly do differently in terms of story and tone to make your sequel stand out? And that's exactly what they did here, was the idea of, what if these things can procreate? And that kind of dives deeper into the humanity of these replicants. So that is a route that I am very glad that they took. I think it's very creative how they explored that route, and I'm just very glad that they did something different that stands out from the first film, and something that was touched upon that I didn't even bother to think about. Let's talk about Ryan Gosling in this film. There are scenes where he is very calm and very settled down, and once you find out a little bit more about his character, you understand why he is the way he is, and given for what his character was, he did a fantastic job of what he was trying to convey here. And whenever he needed to push it up a little bit and be somewhat emotional about what was going on, it was so unexpected. I kind of jumped out of my seat a little bit, and that was just like such a performance from him. I really enjoyed Ryan Gosling in this film, and I think this is probably one of the best films that he has been in. Like, besides, like, The Nice Guys. I really like this film a lot. And let's talk about Dave Bautista. Like, he has stated that he wants to be in more serious roles. He was in the latest James Bond film, Spectre, but he doesn't really say anything in that film. He says some stuff in this film, but, like, the problem is that he's not really in the film for a lot. I'm not going to specify how long he's in the film for, but for what he does in this, I really think this guy needs to be in more serious roles, because he has conveyed that he is an actor. He's not just Drax from Guardians of the Galaxy. He can act. This guy needs to be in more serious roles, because he takes his acting very seriously. He's not just a comedic guy. He's not just a WWE star. I feel like he could be an actor in the near future. He is an actor, but like I think he could be in more serious roles. And this is proof that he could be in a serious role in the future, and maybe even an Oscar-winning role. And let's talk about Jared Leto, because obviously he had to redeem himself after the Joker and Suicide Squad. I really like Jared Leto in this film, because he's kind of got a god complex. He is a replicant who makes other different replicants, and the way that they approach his character is so godlike, but he's also a perfectionist. Even though he's making all these different replicants, if he finds out that there is another replicant out there that's doing something that his replicants aren't doing, he will immediately stop what he's doing. It's like, okay, I don't want to like continue my work. I want to like be focused on this new replicant and find out how to perfect my work. It was actually kind of horrifying as well, because it showed that he had kind of like this god complex, but he had no remorse for any of his creations, and he was just focused on making a better design for his work. So I thought that was a very scary undertone to his character. Also, really good monologue sequences. I think this is one of those characters where I have to read online all the dialogue that he says, because it's so in-depth, and I don't want to miss anything, because he says a lot, and I want to read into what he says, because there's a lot that he says that I just didn't like grab. So I'm definitely going to be reading that in the future as well. Let's talk about Harrison Ford. Harrison Ford, also, like he did as Han Solo in the new Star Wars film, really good. He is able to showcase that even though he is, you know, let's face it, Harrison Ford's kind of old, he's still a badass. Harrison Ford, I really am so glad that he returned for this. And it explains what happened to him after the events of the original Blade Runner. And what you find out that happens in this 30-year span is so sad and heartbreaking. And it really just opened your eyes as to what this character has been through. And you see that through his strict mannerism, that this guy has been through a lot of shit and he doesn't take shit anymore. So I'm really glad that they took this character that we know from the original Blade Runner and they added this story that really made me appreciate the character even more. There are also tones that this movie tries to do that are different. They try to actually mimic the movie Her a little bit, which I thought at first I wasn't really gonna like or appreciate, because I really like the movie Her, because I think that says a lot about like relationships and long distance relationships where you can't physically touch a person. They tried to do that in this film with one of the characters, and I actually found that I really liked it, and maybe even a little bit more than Her. There's a sequence in this film where the AI tries to hire someone, like in the movie Her, in order to be a surrogate for her lover, and I just found that to be so much more visually pleasing because they're syncing up. There's actually a hologram involved, and I just liked it visually more. I love the movie Her, but in terms of how it looked, I liked how this looked visually more. Overall, guys, I think that this movie is definitely one of the most philosophical films to come out this year. Is it long? Yeah, it's pretty long. It's a really long movie. But if you go into this as like a person who loves film and you're not just a conventional moviegoer, you'll love this. If you love the original Blade Runner, you'll definitely love this. I think it has more to say about the replicants and their humanity, and especially that one key plot about whether or not the replicants can procreate. I found that to be really interesting. Like I said, I wasn't expecting that whatsoever, and I definitely recommend this film if you're a fan of sci-fi, a fan of the director, and just a fan of philosophical film. And the cinematography. Roger Deakins has done it again. He is like, damn, just look at this. This is like some really good stuff here. Like, this guy is really good at lighting. I wish I was good at lighting, because I am not good at lighting. See, there's like a shadow right behind me. I am shit at lighting. So yes, guys, that was my review of Blade Runner 2049. Comment down below what you thought of this movie if you've seen it yet. Like the video, share it, and please subscribe to Pixel Talk if you haven't yet for more movie reviews, trailer reactions, and gaming content. Thank you guys so much. I am Corbin Stuckey, and this is Pixel Talk.